Don't drink coffee, I take tea, my dear.
Oh, hello, and welcome to Tea with me, Cheryl C. So today I'm doing an unscheduled segment in that I was supposed to do a different topic, but this one was important to address as soon as possible, and I thought I would do that. So we are talking once again about shareholder activism, a force for good, according to many people, including myself, but that depends on how the activism is undertaken. So we are going to be talking about the 7 UK investment trusts that were under attack by Saba Capital Management since December of this year with the requisitions that they proposed to the 7 companies. So in particular, what I want to look at in the article that Investment Week put out yesterday in relation to the cost associated to the companies defending themselves from the activism. So, according to Investment Week, the full cost will be disclosed in the company's upcoming accounts. So, as one of the shareholders who did ask this question to the companies about cost, I am very interested in finding out about this for many reasons, which I will cover. So, what I might want to do with this segment is actually pretend I'm having tea with Boaz. As many people who will have watched my segments know, I take a very balanced view of activism. So having run many activist campaigns for both companies and activist investors, I can appreciate the challenges and the intellect on both sides. So hey, Boaz, hope you have been keeping well. I hope I get a chance to meet you one day soon. Just like other retail shareholders, I'm super keen to put a face to the name. I really wanted to take a look at your response to Investment Week's article about the costs incurred by the companies in defending against the requisition general meetings. And I think the best place to begin would be to look at my comments to the editor at Investment Week, to her post on LinkedIn, where basically I lay down some important considerations on both sides. So she was informing of the article, and I disclose here that I am actively watching for information on the cost for these requisition general meetings and the ensuing AGMs, having asked, quite strongly at these general meetings, particularly at Herald, about the cost. So I did do a back of the envelope conservative cost analysis of the Herald campaign, which I put out in a YouTube video a few weeks ago. Again, this is all based on my experience and my understanding of the different advisors, and of course, all the work involved and all the time involved in running these campaigns. And look, in my engagement with the company, so their chair, other board members, the fund manager, company secretary, their advisors, I really do think they tried their best to keep costs at a minimum. But still, as we can see here, this is not cheap. And then if I even judge by the mailing that they put out, which was quite conservative. I think they only sent one mailing. Again, I covered this in my other YouTube videos, one mailing compared to the others who sent out 4. This is already conservative. And then the mailing they sent out, it was the least colorful, like literally. Of course, it was composed well for its target audience of retail shareholders, but even the letter itself, it looked very much like they were counting their pennies in consideration of their shareholders. And despite all of that, penny pinching and conservatism, they still won by what they would probably describe as a landslide, which says a lot about shareholder engagement, but also about potentially the emotional connection that shareholders have for this company and even its fund manager, with whom they have entrusted their money for a few decades now. So perhaps that's something that activists don't always factor in. And I know that I learned this myself just from observing this, because I found it entirely incredible how some of these shareholders actually have come out publicly on my posts as an example, and also at the shareholder meetings about how they stand by Harold. They stand by Katie Potts. So by the by, we're talking about cost here, but I just wanted to put that out there for future consideration on companies one might decide to attack. So what I put down here are things that are important to me, okay? As both, as both a shareholder and a practitioner of good governance. So what I have always said to my clients on both sides is that requisitioning shareholder meetings should be an absolute final resort if all engagement efforts fall through. And those engagement efforts should be very, very clearly documented in great detail with the exact dates, times, who the engagement was with, what was discussed, what the outcome was, and what the next steps would be. And then if that fails, then basically the activist is left with no choice. But the hope is that, as you will know, because you are an expert, is that a closed door resolution would take place. Because as we all know, requisitioning a general meeting is so expensive and disruptive, both financially and humanly, to both sides, and also the shareholders involved. And let's remember that the shareholders of these investment trusts, many of them are retail shareholders, as we already know, and many of them are not spring chickens. So them getting a ton of mailing suddenly can be quite baffling. So basically, what I also put here is that in the US, I use this as an example because of what I have looked at previously, case studies. In the US, public companies generally cannot charge back, the cost of a shareholder requested special meeting to the activist shareholder. But I have seen cases of this happening as a result of mostly two things. One, this is explicitly allowed in the company's bylaws or charter, and the costs arising to improper conduct, bad faith, or legal violations by the activists. Obviously, this would have to go to court and fought out, but I have seen cases of this actually happening. I have to dig deeper, but essentially, it has happened before. In the UK, I haven't seen this, but it has been brought up many times in my engagement with companies on activist situations. But basically, I think there is an important point about the human element of these activist campaigns. In this particular situation, just based on my engagement with the companies, so like a super nerd, I attended the general meetings of these companies. I even went to Edinburgh, all the way to Edinburgh, and ended up with a cough that I've had for since 14th of February. That was Edinburgh Worldwide's Valentine present to me. Thanks, Ewit. But I went to these general meetings and got to meet the companies. But I was really disappointed to hear from them and their advisors that there was little to no engagement with Saba prior to them receiving the requisitions. So I can only base my conclusions on what I've heard. But if that is true, that is not best practice. And from my perspective, if there was engagement prior to the requisitioning, everyone may have saved money, everyone may have saved time, everyone may have saved their Christmas, given the fact that you guys employed the tactic of requisitioning over Christmas time, which is a classic activist maneuver. I mean, I remember sending out Section 116 and 811 requests around brunch time on Sundays, which is a bit cruel because it would have ruined the poor company secretary's Sunday. But hey, it just showed how serious we were. But ultimately, these things do need to be factored in, because I think what the point is now for these companies and for the shareholders who are very worried, given the fact that they're looking at share prices and discount to NAV. They're asking questions on what next, what's going to happen. And I totally appreciate your point about narrowing the discount. But looking at this, the discount has basically gone up again. So it looks like we're going to be in this for the long haul, or at least you are. So what to do next, right? Um, so now I've lost my train of thought a little bit, but basically let's go back to what the heck is going on. Because um, these guys are being asked for information on what they spent, what that spend, how that spend impacts retail shareholders, how that spend affects shareholders and the company, and whether that spend would have to continue. And again, what that impact would be on the company. Now, on your side, Boaz, I keep reminding these people, I haven't been easy on them. They probably thought I was like one of your moles or something because I was asking questions that were quite pressing actually in terms of do they really believe in the narrative of a big bad activist hedge fund, corporate raider going to chop up their beloved UK investment trust when Saba is an SEC regulated entity that itself has a fiduciary duty to its own stakeholder. So I ask questions like that. But equally, it's not great to hear from these people that there was little to no engagement prior to the requisition. That disappoints me personally as someone who worked so hard, up to 20 years ago to help other American activists be listened to and taken seriously here in the UK. And it had been great working with those activists because together we came up with a way of them being authentic and still being super aggressive, but in the style that the Brits, particularly the shareholders who they need to influence, would understand and be able to support. So basically, the questioning around how much this costs the company is of great interest to shareholders. And what I was starting to say was the cost that you would have incurred as well is also huge. I keep reminding everyone that Saba is a major stakeholder of the UK investment trust industry with your total investment of £3.2 billion, which is more than 1% of the £300 billion pound industry. Just the stamp duty alone that you would have paid to convert your swaps or your CFDs into voting positions is already massive. So you yourself probably dished out around 5 million quid, 5 million pounds just for that, plus the cost to pay your advisors, bearing in mind that you had a very, very slim advisory team. But this has not been cheap for you. But you are an important stakeholder in the UK investment trust industry, and you do deserve respect. And to receive that respect, much more, the companies are requesting that from you. Why do I feel like I'm talking to Donald Trump and to Xi Jinping? Anyway, so point here is that there will be questions overall on how much this has costed everyone, the shareholders and the companies, how much this has costed you, and how much you would have made from this. So if I was the journalist, what I'd be looking at is all of those things I mentioned. So in the article here, they're focusing heavily on what this costed the companies, but I'm trying to get them to think about what this costed you as well. But then there would be other questions about, all right, then, so you think they made money? So you think, Cheryl, that they don't really care that they've lost all 7 of these gigs, all 7 of these activist fights? Because in your position, you say that activists are happy to lose the vote, win the argument, because they still make money. So if I was the journalist, I'd be studying how much money you have made or have lost. And then there can be a strong conclusion of the financial impact this has had on everyone, and whether, as per this video I did a few weeks back, whether that all that cost was worth it. And let's also bear in mind the human element. We're all big boys and girls, right? Like sticks and stones. And actually, this campaign was probably one of the least sticky stony I have seen. Yeah, you were not painted well in the media. I was really hoping for more balanced viewpoints, but I think you're really peeved people off. Um, and maybe this is why there was such a struggle to get some good stories out. So I really did appreciate the podcast that you did with Jonathan. I can't remember his last name. The My guy crush, John Stepek. He has the best accent, right? I love the interplay between you guys. I thought that was really well done. And even Investment Week, the young guy, I can't. Oh my goodness, perimenopause. He was actually the young guy from Cambridge. He did some very balanced articles, but basically, I think here the human cost was very high. I think the companies and the UK, for me, felt like they took or defaulted to a very protectionist um, narrative because you did touch a chord within them. And then for me, that very old school protectionist narrative was really, ew, infantilizing because can we not be the better person and and you know take the communications high road. But now, one can understand the emotional element. And my hope is that now that everyone has gone through this, retail shareholders have inadvertently been better educated about the importance of exercising their votes and understanding what more needs to be done for the system to be better for engaging with them. And certainly the Association of Investment Companies, AIC, and us here at the Engagement Appeal are working hard on shareholder rights campaigning. But now we can think more rationally about how things could be done better going forward to look out for the best interests of everyone, of all shareholders, including Saba, best interests of all stakeholders. So ultimately, the points here, all about, best practice. And then the best practice also relates to this second point, which is very much about the bigger picture of the AGM season, which is basically starting in a couple of weeks in May. So ultimately, T continues to push for best practice. And actually, it becomes very hard for me to say that, Boaz and Saba are so amazing and we should be lucky to have them invest in UK investment trusts when you're not even showing up at these shareholder meetings. I think you are now engaging with the companies more, which is absolutely brilliant. But again, it's really hard to advocate the wisdom and the awesomeness of Saba when retail shareholders have not seen you. On the 29th of March, at the end of March, there was Master Investor. So basically, a retail shareholder event that happens annually, which has about 3,000 to 5,000 retail shareholders attending. And look, even these Baillie Gifford guys and their man in finance, gilets, vests, turned up, which was great. Basically, to meet the thousands of retail shareholders, there were other fund managers and investment trusts there as well. There were several dozens. It was a big show. Basically, meeting retail shareholders. To be honest, I would have loved to have seen you at that event, and other retail shareholders would have loved to have seen you because they've heard so much about you. And I think it's a way of influencing. If you think this is so boring, these retail shareholders, yeah, so most of the master investor people are very traditional. Yes, they're kind of the ilk of the Herald Investment Trust, church commissioner type dudes, but actually they might look like church commissioners, but some of the shareholders I think are badass entrepreneurs that Katie Potts and team invested in years ago, and now some of these people are grandees. It's incredible. I mean, the history of investment trusts is fascinating. I mean, kudos to you because of your activism, you've actually made me a super nerd interested in investment trusts, which I thought was just extremely dull. But now I'm damn, so fascinating. And in fact, investment trusts are an important fiber of the success of entrepreneurship here in the UK. Anyway, you've made me interested in it. And I also found out that one of my academic inspirations, Professor Jeanette Rutherford, is one of the leading researchers on the history of investment trusts. So I find out something new all the time. Anyway, I'm getting hyper now. So basically, there is lots to consider. I hope you don't mind me taking tea with you. But again, I am just interested in the best interest of everyone. Now that you have razzled me into being interested in investment trusts, there's a lot more that I believe can be done to ensure better engagement between you, the companies, and your fellow shareholders. Again, it would be fantastic for you to meet with people like me. And if you want, I'd be happy with the engagement appeal with T to organize a retail shareholder gathering. For you, we can even invite Gen Zs because we have a Gen Z program here. And actually, as an alternative, if you didn't want to, that was my point, if you didn't want to hang out with all these cool cats here, happening at the same time as that Master Investor Show was this UK CardCon, which is run and founded by one of our Gen Z ambassadors called Niyam Patel. Essentially, there were about over 5,000 alternative investing people at the show trading sports cards for hundreds of pounds, if not thousands of pounds. So the appetite for investing in this country is huge. So there's so many options. But, in any case, thank you for everything that you are trying. Thank you for being patient and engaging more with the companies. So I hope you understand my point of view in regards to what I think Investment Week is questioning. And we go from there. Okay, so thanks for taking tea with me, Cheryl C. See you again soon. Bye.
Don't drink coffee, I take tea, my dear.